Greetings, listeners, and welcome to the Care Table podcast, dedicated to educating and supporting family caregivers of aging loved ones. I'm your host, Amy Huddleston. Through insightful interviews from both industry experts and family caregivers, we aim to provide valuable perspectives and resources. Let's see who we're learning from today. Hi, welcome to today's episode of the Care Table. I'm very excited to have a dear friend here to talk about her caregiving journey with both of her parents. My sweet friend, Rachel. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Hello, my sweet.
So happy to see you. And we're going to talk about both mom and dad, if that's okay. This is our caregiving journey episode where the goal is to share stories about everything that you navigated through in caring for mom and dad and people that are in similar situations, if they can learn from what your advice, what went well, what you wish you would have known sooner, that sort of thing. So let's dig in first to just talking about your mom and your dad and what their kind of their physical and mental conditions were at the time that you were navigating the journey.
Okay, so mom passed first. She had melanoma, and that was in her leg, and that came about because I looked at her leg one day and I'm like, I don't like that one. And she went to the doctor, and and she's like, yeah, that was melanoma. So do your checks, go to the derm. Anyway, so mom had melanoma, and it took her sort of bit by bit physically. And she passed in 2016. And dad had cared for her through the end. She died at home. Fortunately, they had long-term care insurance in place, so she was able to have care at home, and she passed there. Dad moved here in January of 2018 to be closer to us and my kids. And his decline started probably 18 months later from dementia. And so he ultimately passed of end-stage Alzheimer's.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions there. Okay, so talk first about, I'm curious, really happy to hear, obviously, they had long-term care insurance. Do you have any idea at what age they purchased that?
So they were both teachers in the school district of Philadelphia. And although the school district of Philadelphia does not nearly adequately pay its teachers, what it did was have unbelievable benefits. And they both had these long-term care policies as part of their teachers union package. And it was without question the best gift that they had ever given us, because they all their costs were just covered, all of them. And I know how unbelievably rare this is. I have a very good friend who works, at the time she was working at one of the facilities where my dad was, and she looked at this policy and she's like, what am I looking at? You can't buy this coverage anymore. It does not exist. So it was the kindest thing my parents ever did, was to have this stuff in place so that that piece was, thank God for us, not a worry. Which I understand how lucky I am. I understand how unusual that is. But Jason and I, my husband and I, are sitting down next week to purchase our own, which won't be remotely what they had, but it will be at least something so that our children don't have to have that piece of worry.
I think it's very wise advice that you're doing that. It's great. And you're right. I mean, that is not a policy that would be given today unless it was probably a lot of money for sure. So I'm really happy to hear that you didn't have the financial, obviously, burden that a lot of families try to juggle, figuring out, like, how am I going to care for them if I don't have the funds to do it? So going back to your mom, was she at home the entire time during her melanoma?
Except when she was in the hospital, but yeah.
Okay. So she was at home. Did you use any services like hospice or any care that was provided?
Yeah. She and I had to fight with dad who said, I've got it, I've got it. And you know what? At some point, you don't have it and you can't be expected to have it. And it's not fair to expect you to have it. Um, and so she was 12 hours a day, then 24 hours a day. They just had somebody who sat there and just helped.
From the hospice agency?
No,
I
from
was
a
gonna say, yeah.
no, no,
Okay.
I guess this was during hospice, but just towards the end. She in March, 6 months before she passed, she fell during the night. My dad found her, and she was in a coma for 9 days. So I, flew right out there. They were in Philadelphia, I was in Columbus, and so I flew out there and sat in the ICU with her for 9 days until she woke up. Um, and then, once she had to go to rehab for several months after that because every day in the hospital requires 3 days of rehab. So she was in rehab for a while.
So
And
that was obviously before the hospice, because hospice okay,
so hospice, she was probably on hospice for about 2 or 3 months.
okay. What would you tell families about hospice?
It's the best thing ever. It's a hard pill to swallow. It's a hard thing to say, "I am at the end of life," but the hospice workers, for the most part, are angels on this planet. They are, and the benefits you get, the things that kick in from Medicare, um, all your supplies are paid for. You don't have to worry about any of that. And the hospice workers, like, these are people who sign up to get emotionally connected to people who are going to die. And their whole purpose in life is to give dignity at the end. They are just like the loveliest humans, God bless, because I could never do it. Very special breed of human. And when it's time to do that, it's time to do that. Now, my dad, flipping to him for a hot second, um, he was on hospice for a very unusual amount of time. He was on hospice for 18 months.
Great.
Not
That's
great.
actually well, I want people to hear that. Because I think people don't understand. I think people call hospice when there's 2 days left. So, it's a good thing for people to hear that it doesn't mean that it's 2 days away. They can provide services for 18 months.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Absolutely did. The adjustable bed because of hospice, this very special wheelchair because of hospice, all the supplies. They were there's a benefits. There's a list of benefits depending on what you need. I think hospice just means that I agree to stop treating my terminal condition. It doesn't mean I agree to stop receiving care.
You're correct. Yes.
So he was on hospice for 18 months.
So when you can we go back to your mom for a minute? I'm curious, was this were you nudging your parents to consider that hospice phone call? How
No,
did that happen?
I think the doctor brought it in.
Okay.
Um, she had a very wonderful family practitioner, and I think he said, "It's time to make this call." She signed her own hospice paperwork.
Wow. Okay.
It was
That's
her decision.
okay. How did your dad handle that decision or about your mother?
I mean, we all knew.
Okay. It just
It
and
was
so you knew everybody was willing to accept some extra support.
Yeah, and I said, I'm like, "I don't see," I looked at her and I said, "I don't see the downside here." And, so, yeah, so she didn't wanna face it. That was tough, but she signed her own paperwork. She was mentally all there.
And so she passed at home,
Mhm.
which is probably where she wanted to pass.
Mhm.
Yes. I think a lot of people that would be their wish, and if you can make that happen, which hospice I think is amazing at setting up, like you said, the bed, the supplies that you need, anything that's needed so that person can stay in the setting where they are most comfortable, that's what they'll do for you.
Yes.
Was there anything you learned about, hospice that you didn't know before that experience?
I didn't know anything about hospice.
Okay. So what
Think about.
did anything surprise you?
I didn't know really the word before my mom. Um, and so it was all explained to me that, you get access to all of the, this laundry list of things that hospice just covers. Um, and I've it's been a minute since I've thought about my mom's version of it, but the people were the nurses were in and out of the house. They brought the things she needed. They did the things she needed. The bathing, the changing, the special bed, they just took care of that. So we didn't have to.
And that's okay, so that's I'm very thankful to hear though that she got to pass at home, which is
Yeah. And
so
then there
sh
was a hospice nurse that was sitting with her who, I was asleep and she came to get me and she said, "We're heading to the end." And so I was there, my dad was there. And then she passed within 20 minutes of she's heading to the end,
Oh, yeah, they do this every day. They're very aware of what's
which
happening.
mind blowing to me. But she's like, there are steps. This is what the body does.
Yeah. So you at this point, if you had mentioned you're in Columbus,
Mhm.
they're in Philadelphia. How soon after mom passed did you move dad closer to you?
She passed in October, a year, and I guess the 2 month he moved like January 1st.
Okay. So you and I have talked before about let's talk for a minute about how did you get him out of his house? How was that experience? Maybe some deep breathing.
My parents had lived in that house since I was 10 months old. Mom's version of I can't control my body, I can't control the things that are going on with me. Mom's version was I'm going to control my stuff. So there was a lot of stuff. So much stuff. I found my baby teeth. I found, right, no, I can go on a list of things that I found. So it was 9 trips to Philadelphia to clean out the house. While I was sitting with her in the ICU, I would be in the ICU when she in March when she had that fall. I would sit in the ICU for 14 hours a day, and then I would come home and pathologically clean the house. And I was throwing out my grandparents' check stubs from the 70s. But in the middle of my grandparents' check stubs from the 70s, which I didn't even have to shred because that bank didn't exist anymore for 20 years, um, I found my grandfather's love letters to my grandmother. Right,
Oh,
right.
that's so amazing, but also I just can't imagine how long it was. It just you doing this?
My brother would help sometimes. My brother lived 5 minutes away. Whenever I would call him, he would come right over and help me with whatever I needed. Um, and then my husband flew out a couple times, and my sister-in-law would be there too. Um, so we were working together as a team, but I was without a doubt the team lead. I was, yes. So I don't mean
How
to
was
just.
your dad handling you getting rid of things while he was still there?
Um, some of it was relief. Some of it was, my mom, the essence of who my mom was she was a guidance counselor. And so she kept her files on every student she had ever worked with because they might come back and need something someday. And I want to remember who they are.
Okay.
So she wanted to be available to them if they needed her. And the only way she was going to be available is if she had their file so she could remember what she had said about them.
Oh my goodness. How many years was she a guidance counselor?
A lot. And the school records had like personal information. And back then they had social security numbers on them. So I couldn't just pitch this. I had to shred this because
Okay.
I felt responsibility to these people. I didn't want to just throw their social security numbers in the trash. So I was, shredding. You can't even. The camera doesn't go this big. Stacks of school records.
Oh my goodness. So 9 trips, you said. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you wish you would have, you and I have talked about how there are senior downsizing companies.
I know about them.
Okay. Well, now
This is a
we
great time to talk about them. Yes, I discovered with my dad that there are these wonderful humans whose job it is to help downsize seniors. So when your parents are moving from like their giant house to the two-bedroom condo,
Mhm.
um, they come in, they're a third person, there's no emotional connection. They come in and they help just keep, sell, throw out. And my husband wound up using one of those people um, for his mom
Okay.
because she was in Florida and he did as much as he could do. And then he just virtually did some of it with this person, keep, sell, throw out.
Donate, whatever. We did an episode with a downsizing expert, so we have an episode on that so people can
But
understand.
yes.
It, like you said too, it's a very emotional experience. So it is, if you can afford to do it, if you can have this neutral third party come in and say, you know what, I'm here to help. And we're going to talk about what do we want to keep, to make your new home very cozy and welcoming. And then we're going to talk about what we're going to do with the rest of it. And I think it sounds like a godsend, but I'm sorry that you did not have that when you were
Um,
downsizing dad.
yeah. So
Okay.
there are some times in this process where if you can, you just got to throw some money at it.
I agree. If you can.
If you can, and I don't mean to be glib about the if you can, because I understand if you can't. But good God, in that particular moment, there's not an amount of money that I wouldn't have thrown at that. Um,
To help you. Oh
and
my gosh, because I'm
do some of it. And also, if that person were local, like I wasn't local to Philadelphia, if I had had stuff here, I could have put it on the local buy sell page, and I would have been here, and they could have picked it up. And there's so much stuff, more stuff that I would have loved to have been able to donate, but I didn't have. I literally couldn't, and I wasn't going to make my dad sit home and wait for somebody to pick up this, that, and the other thing.
right. So it was, you did the best you could do, obviously, in
Yeah,
that
but
situation.
yeah,
I'm guessing not something you'd like to do again.
I would immediately come home and throw out 3 boxes from my basement,
I get that.
doing this to my kids.
Oh, I can understand that. Okay, so dad moves, you go through that, and you moved him into a condo. Is that what you said?
Moved him into, Waxner Creekside Village, uh,
Okay.
and he came here at Thanksgiving, and he walked in the lobby, and he walked around, and he goes, "Yep, I want this," and I said, "Great."
Also a gift, because
Uh,
not a normal response.
well, I did have to persuade him out of a few other choices that I said, he's like, "I wanna stay in Philadelphia," and I said, "That's fine, but I can't do this 9 visits, and I can't be there every 2 weeks for 6 months like I did with mom. There isn't another person in the house like mom had with you, and my brother's 5 minutes away, like, that's fine. You wanna have this conversation with him, you should do that. But if you want me to take care of you, and, oh, by the way, your 3 grandchildren are here, and they're still young and in the house, and if you wanna come have a better relationship with them, we're here."
Yes.
Um,
So he
so
made that decision. And was it assisted living or independent at that time?
it started out as independent living,
Okay.
and then but they had the option to sort of add things in one at a time, add services in one at a time as he needed them. So the first service we added in was medication management because he was either forgetting to take it or he was taking something like 4 times a day instead of 1 because he forgot that he had taken it. And he really pushed back, and I had to say to him, like, "Look, if you suffer this one indignity," and I acknowledge that it is, having your own medications locked up and having somebody else administer them, it'll keep you independent the other 23 hours and 59 minutes a day. Because when he was taking 4 of this one medication instead of 1, he it took his mind. And as soon as he was taking only the one that he was supposed to take, he came back.
Okay.
So that was a tough, but, like, I get that it's an indignity, and it is. Both my parents were fiercely, fiercely independent humans, and so accepting help, it was not easy for either of them.
At that point, I'm curious, was he driving?
Yes.
Okay. So he's in independent living. He's getting some help with medication management, which I'm sure is like an a la carte charge, by the way, right? Like, so it's one other thing you have to pay for. And then he's still driving.
Yes.
Okay. So then tell me what happens, like, as far as his dementia progressing and that sort of thing. Walk me through that timeline.
So, he was functioning reasonably well. I described it at the time as a B plus.
Okay.
He wasn't firing at 100%, but, he was a solid B plus.
Okay.
Um, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "You have this heart condition. And if you don't have this surgery, you've got 6 months to live. If you do have this surgery, the biggest risk is the anesthesia. Um, because there's a 15% chance that if you have the surgery, you're not going to come out of it. Like, your mind won't come back out." And I said, "Well, there's a 15% chance that your mind won't come back out, but you're functioning at a B plus. So, and there's a 100% chance that you're going to be dead in 6 months if you don't have this surgery. So I think we got to go." And so he had the surgery, and his heart was as strong as it's ever been, and he never came back out.
He was in the 15%.
He was the 15%. Now, I do need to back the story up briefly. I tried to take him for neurology, for cognitive testing, for all that stuff, and he just fought, didn't would refuse to participate in the testing. And if you refuse to, it's not an EKG. They strap the things on, and it says what it says. If you're not participating in the cognitive testing, the testing is invalid. If we had known a little bit better about exactly the type of dementia he had, exactly the type of disease he had, they might have been able to tailor the anesthesia a little bit better to that type. If
Wow.
it helped, I don't know. I have,
Okay.
but because they sort of had to guess at what was wrong with him, they used their best guess. Now, would it have changed things? I will never know. Do I wish he'd had that testing prior? I do.
Okay.
He didn't want to know.
He
He
didn't wanna know.
he refused to participate.
Okay, because I was thinking, was it more, "I'm fine, I don't need this silly test," or is it, "I don't wanna know"?
Both with a lot of
Okay.
positives.
Okay, with expletives? So a lot of them. Okay.
I'm
I oh my gosh, and I've had a lot of expletives said at me too over the years from people who didn't want us coming into their home, so I
yeah.
it's a normal thing. Okay. So, in hindsight, I mean, the thing that's hard is I get that you wish he would have participated in that, but you can't make him.
Not
So, do you feel like there's anything you could have done differently there?
no. No,
Okay,
it's just the, like, in the God forbid scenario, it happens to me someday, I feel like I can behave differently on behalf of my children.
you learned. You learned. Okay. Okay. So, knowing, okay, and that is very typical. I'm not gonna participate. I'm not doing the stupid test. I'm fine.
Because
So
if
he
it's
goes
black
and he
and white,
gets.
it's real.
Did you think by the time that he was going in for the surgery, did you sense any dementia?
Yeah.
You
No,
did.
that's when he was at, I would say, the B plus.
The B plus. So it was just a little bit of like short-term memory loss that he was experiencing. Okay. So then after the surgery, I'm curious, how much of a difference did you notice in his memory?
It was an F minus. I mean, he just didn't, like, it was bad. Um,
Wow.
and the surgery was in July of 2020.
Okay.
If you'll recall how the world was in July of 2020,
Chosen to block that out.
as you should.
Okay.
Particularly in elder care and assisted living facilities, in Like, we had to hire round the clock care for him. He was not allowed to leave his apartment at all because he'd been in the hospital, and their rule was once you'd been to outside the facility to the hospital, you had to stay in your apartment for 2 weeks. And they which he didn't understand.
No.
He couldn't understand. And, he had these women in there 24 hours a day that we had to pay for, and that was a freaking fortune, um, to basically keep him prisoner in his apartment. I had to get special permission to be able to go into the building because visitors were not allowed. And so I got special permission to be in the building to calm him down. I had to get special permission to say, he just had heart surgery. You cannot, he has to walk. Like,
Gotta move.
like it's part of his recovery. Like you have to allow him. So twice a day, he was allowed to go straight down to the lobby, out the front door, and then take a walk twice a day. But he didn't understand.
Why can't I do it 4 times a day? Why
Why,
can't yeah, of
why are you, stranger, keeping me prisoner in my apartment?
course he's gonna be agitated. At that stage, did he know who you are, like,
No.
recognized you, knows you're his daughter? Okay. Okay. That's good.
Yes. So, but that it's good for him. It's terrible for me and the other 3 people that he knows who we are because now it's all on us.
I know. You're having to go there, I'm guessing, how frequently to calm him down?
A lot.
A lot. So talk about, you've told me this, but I want you to tell the audience is when you were navigating all this with your dad, let's talk about who you hired to help you.
Yes.
Explain that to us.
So, and I should back this backs the story up quite a bit.
Okay.
A very dear friend of mine, um, Gail Rosen, I will plug her because she's a
Yes.
wonderful human. Um, she said, I want to start a business. I want to help seniors. I want to be a geriatric care manager. These are words I had not heard all strung together. And I said, okay. She's like, I'll be your first client. She said, great. And so she met with my dad when my dad was pretty much in the whole of his faculties. You know, he'd known Gail for years, but we hired her to be his care manager. And when I tell people about hiring a care manager for their own parents, I always say you need to hire this person before you need them. And the reason is that Gail and my dad at that point would go out to lunch once a month, or if my son needed a birthday gift, she would take him to Target to buy the AirPods I told her that he wanted. Um, so they just sort of created a friendship, they created a relationship. And so that she was in his brain as somebody I know. But also, they had at some point, I assume, because I wasn't at these conversations, but conversations about how he wanted the end of his life to go, what his wishes were. And so she knew how he wanted this to go down. And he, I think, was able to have conversations with her, someone he had a relationship with, but who wasn't his dog. And as it sort of progressed, and my whole function with him was to take him to the doctor. So 3 times a week, I was taking him to, the general practitioner or the neurologist or the podiatrist, and all I was doing, our entire interactions were me taking him to the doctor, me taking him home. And she looks at me, she goes, you need to start being his daughter and stop being his caretaker so much. And so when it was the podiatrist, I didn't need to go watch him get his toenails clipped. Like, I didn't need to be at that appointment. And if it was the neurologist where I really did need to be there, okay, that one I went to.
Mhm.
Um,
And she would take him to the podiatrist.
take him to the other stuff.
That's so great.
And so she sort of took some of the burden off of me. And my brother he couldn't help. My brother would help virtually with whatever he could help with, but he was in Philadelphia. He wasn't driving my dad to a doctor's appointment in Columbus on a Tuesday. Like
Mm-mm.
that's just not how that was going to go down. Um, So she took some of that burden off of me, the both the physical and the emotional burden.
And I
And
assume she would report back to you, like,
100%.
toenails look good, whatever it is. Like she would come back and say,
Enough not to share, like, toenails look good. Um,
but it's helpful. It's like this,
no, it was all in a document that I could access.
oh, that's so great. Oh
And
my gosh.
so she helped during that awful July. She made a binder for all of the caregivers, and this is who Josh is, and this is his schedule of medications, and they had to sort of sign in and out. And this is what happened when I was here. He slept the whole time because it was overnight, or we talked, or he was agitated, or whatever it was.
Mhm.
Sort of a record of this is what went down.
Did Gail help you set up that round the clock care?
Oh yeah, she
Okay,
found all those
great.
people. She found
Okay.
all those people.
Okay, great. So it's like you basically had one point of contact for you, and she was facilitating everything that needed to be done.
Mhm.
That's so fantastic. Okay, and I love that because I mean, I've tried to have some conversations even with my own healthy parents about what is it that you want at the end of your life, and it's not a welcome conversation.
They don't want to talk about that with you.
No.
They want to protect
So
that.
yeah, I like that you had this third party that's also a friend that was this resource to say, I'll have those difficult conversations with dad and figure out, as this progresses, this is what he's hoping for. And do you have any idea of what he told her? Like what he wanted?
He watched his own mother pass from Alzheimer's. He wanted a shotgun. He didn't want to do that.
I can understand that response
Hmm.
because he saw it firsthand and he knew what it did to him. I think it's the hardest on the family, like you're saying, that it's not the person that you have known your entire life. And now, oh my goodness. Okay, so that was not an option. So what was offered to him, I guess, as
Well, I
an
mean,
alternative?
because he progressed so quickly. It was really a switch for him. That the morning of surgery he was one thing, and the evening of surgery he was just a different human that he just never really came back from. We wound up shortly after, I guess, yeah, shortly after we wound up switching him to memory care at a different facility. Like he needed a higher level of care.
So you had to move him.
Mhm. Well,
Oh,
I had to move him, but at that point I knew about the lovely Laura Schulman, who moved him, physically moved him. I took him for the day and she moved him.
and got everything set up in his room. But that's also very difficult for people with dementia when you're taking them out of this was the room I knew. Now I'm in this setting. How did that go for him?
Wasn't great. That wasn't
Okay.
great. And that was October of 2020. So I think it was October, but it was still 2020. And so we were not allowed to visit him. We were trying to visit him through a glass door. Um, he
I
had
hate that so much.
he had to hold a phone in his hand in order to, like, I was on my cell phone and he was on like their phone, and he didn't understand like the holding the phone, and he could see us but we couldn't touch. It was just torture. I mean, it was just, and I understand why they had to do what they had to do, but it was cruel.
It's cruel because I'm like, especially when you're dealing with people with dementia, you can't reason with them. You can't explain, this is why there's a glass door and you can't touch her. And that's not going to work for them. And
A glass wall that we were like,
oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. That makes me so sad. I would like to ask you, out of everything with mom and dad, what's the biggest lesson that you learned?
there were a lot. Um, I mean, the obvious: tell the people you love them while you can. Um, have these awful conversations while you're healthy. They're uncomfortable and they're horrendous, but it makes it a little bit easier um later. Having these conversations when you're when you're in the throes of all of this, like if I had just sort of known what they both wanted and it was just sort of sitting there in the background, it would have been sort of easier at the end to execute rather than trying to figure it out. Throw shit out. Sorry, I just cursed.
You can curse. It's okay.
Throw it out. Clean out your house. We just redid our basement and the contractor was like, "You have an unusually small amount of stuff for," and I'm like, "Yes, I do. Thank you for noticing."
You're motivating me. I need to get on that
Just, just throw it out.
because you don't want to do that to them. You don't want to do it to your kids. Have you, I know you're younger, but have you had any of these conversations with your kids or your spouse?
Jason and I have certainly had all of these conversations because we have no parents left. Um, and we've told our kids things like, this is where, there's a spreadsheet that will tell you where all the money is. This is where we keep all the documents that you're going to need. This
So
is,
you, okay,
we've had that. Look, I could get hit by a bus,
right? Any of us can.
right? Like there's no, fortunately, knock wood, poo, 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 I'm in reasonably good health, but anything can happen.
Yeah.
There's the life lesson. Life is short. Life is too short. My parents were 75 and 80, and my mom had been sick for years before she died. So life is too short.
Oh, that's so
So,
young too.
you know, my grandfather was 67 when he died of a heart attack. So my grandmother was 90, God bless. But
We're not promised tomorrow.
we're not promised tomorrow. Life is too short. Just take the trip.
Yes, take the trip, but like all that stuff also can't go with us. So it's like just
Yeah.
throw shit out.
Throw shit
Maybe
out.
that's what we'll call this episode. Throw shit out. Okay. If there's anything in all of this that you did with mom and dad, is there anything that you would have done differently now that you can reflect on it?
I mean, I might have had these conversations with them a little earlier. I certainly would have hired somebody to clean out their house. Um, I would have tried to have the difficult conversations earlier. I would have hired a geriatric care manager for mom. Because the geriatric care manager, in addition to taking the burden off of the child or the caregiver, also speaks for the person when they don't have that voice anymore. And so I think it's really hard to have that conversation with your parents. But I think, because my dad knew Gail when like before, after when he didn't know anybody, and I would walk in and he didn't have my name, but I could see his eyes, that there was sort of a light that lit up behind his eyes and go, "I'm not sure who you are, but I know I love you." Um, he also knew her and he let her in those awful days.
I mean, that's honestly phenomenal,
Mhm.
really, because it's when you're dealing with someone that is that advanced, you really do have to live in the moment because you don't know what you're going to walk into. You don't know what version of them you're going to get. And if you had somebody in addition to you that was this friendly face that he would listen and, let maybe calm him down, and that's a gift for you.
Mhm. Yeah, because
And
it meant that, I mean, I went once a week, to this place that he was, and because it was kind of far. Um, and so I went once a week, but she also went. So, like, then there was somebody else, and I didn't have to feel guilt. And this was also still during COVID. So, we were only sort of allowed a certain amount of visits and a certain amount, like we had to call and ask permission. Hey, can we come today? And sometimes the answer was no, because someone on the ward had been died. Like, so she was also, as a medical professional, able to have a little bit more access than I did as a family member.
That's such a gift, I'm telling you that out of all this, I'm obviously know how incredibly difficult this was, but to hear that you could have the long-term care insurance policies that you did and to have a geriatric care manager who happens to be a dear friend, those things are such a blessing, the silver lining in what you were navigating for sure, because there's a lot of people that that wouldn't be an option for them. But if it is,
Oh, I get that. And I'm
go that route.
blessed. Like I don't say it lightly. Like I know um, that my parents and my mother-in-law gave us the gift of being able to do that. One other person I do need to shout out, her name is Cindy Page. Gail found her for me when the first memory care place that my dad was in was not a good fit. They were not taking care of him. Um, I don't want to take my medicine. Okay, you don't have to take your medicine, Josh. Okay, well, when the medicine is antipsychotics, you can't not take it. It's not a choice. So then he was acting out. Surprise. And they said, we can't keep him here anymore. Um, Actually, what really happened on the very worst day of my life was April of 2021. I'm sitting in the urgent care parking lot with my son, who is so sick. He can't, like, it hurts to wear a shirt. And I got the guy in the spacesuit coming out to swab up his nose. And I get a call. I'm sitting in this parking lot. I get a call. This is OSU East registration. We have your dad here. Can you tell me his insurance? And I said, what do you mean you have my father in the emergency room? What's going on? I can't tell you that. I'm just registration. And I said, well, I'm not telling you anything until you tell me why my father's in the ER. Meanwhile, the man with the spacesuit comes back out and says, yes, your son has COVID. And I was less than 2 weeks from being from getting my second vaccine. So I was quarantined in the house with my sick kid who was 14 or 15 at the time. My dad's in the hospital because he's having an episode of what turns out to be delirium. And because they hadn't been making him take his meds. And the facility says he can't come back here. You need to find someplace new for him.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, well, I'm locked in the house for 2 weeks. Like I can't go. And even if I weren't locked in the house for 2 weeks, I've been exposed and I can't go tour places with senior citizens. So Gail found this angel on earth named Cindy who helped me. She found 4 different places that would accept my father in his current condition. And she gave us virtual tours. My brother was able to participate from Philadelphia. And Gail was on the phone, and sometimes my husband was on the phone or my sister-in-law was on the phone, and we did these tours of these places. And she found this place that I had never heard of called Ganshorn, who accepted my father in. And
That's a wonderful place. It's a wonderful.
the reason my father was on hospice for 18 months is because they took such phenomenal care of him. And Cindy, who apparently gets paid by the facilities and not by so this is not even something like, can you afford it? She found him this place that was a fit for him.
Mhm. They are, yeah, they're paid a referral fee by the facility, so the families don't have to front any kind of bill for that.
Yes. So this is one of those, even if you don't have the money, like it's okay. She worked with another friend of mine whose mother didn't have as many financial resources, but whose father had been a veteran. And so they found a grant because her father, my friend didn't look for this. They found a grant that helped her mother be in a much nicer place because Cindy knew to look for this grant who knows to look for a grant?
Yep. The aid and attendance benefit. Yep.
Okay,
For veterans. Yes. But you're right. You're like, you need to find these people that have the knowledge. And I think a lot of times, though, listen to this situation you were in. It's this like, oh my gosh, like it's so immediate. And you're like, what am I supposed to do? And how am I supposed to find an expert? And I need someone that can help me. And then when you get someone that can help you, especially because your geriatric care manager helped you, thank goodness that you had someone that could.
because I'm trapped in my house. Like I can't, like
And I can't even imagine getting a call from the hospital. And then on top of that, the facility saying, hey, by the way, he can't come back here.
Mhm.
Like, you're not even going to give me a week or two to make other arrangements? I
Nope.
mean,
Nope.
oh my gosh.
From the hospital to the new place,
Oh,
where again, Laura picked up his stuff, arranged a guy, picked up his stuff, and moved it from place A to place B.
and your geriatric care manager helped you facilitate all of that. Yes. Okay. But oh my gosh.
So yeah, so my bill for Gail that month was more and worth every penny.
Is that something, I'm just curious, does the long-term care insurance policy cover a geriatric care manager?
Um, that one, it was, and I'm not really sure exactly why the difference, but with my mom's version of which I think is the same policy, my mom, we had to submit the bills to them and then they reimbursed either us or paid directly to the facility. Um, my dad, they just paid us and they said, this is supposed to take care of the things he needs. And I don't know if that's because he was in a facility and she was at home, and I'm not sure if that's the difference. Um, but they just paid the checks directly to us and said, use this money to cover his expenses.
Never heard of that in my life. So
Correct.
great that you have that plan, because normally now it's you've got to provide, the proof of whether it's the home care agency, the assisted living, it's and there's usually a maximum per day that's reimbursed. So to be able to just get this,
Yes, that's what it was with my mom.
okay, but to get the pool of money to say, use it where you need it. Oh my goodness.
Right. It was no, it was insane and the biggest blessing. And I don't think you can buy that policy anymore.
No, don't think so. So glad that you had it, because that is like, I mean,
It
it,
was,
it
no,
sounds
you
like you,
know what you're doing and how to take care of your parent. And we're going to just trust that you know what you're doing and you're going to use the money the way it's supposed to be used. No, we don't do that anymore.
we do not do that anymore. And I also think what's difficult is that when you don't have, I mean, this is a whole nother conversation that we'll have to have with long-term care insurance policies, but when I had my home care agency, we facilitated all of that for our clients who had policies, because these insurance companies are requiring you to give, documentation of every day's visits, the invoices. I mean, that you think someone who's, let's say, 85 years old in their home has a fax machine or a scanner, or, the ability to do that on a regular basis is it's a stretch.
I think they bank on that.
And that's unfortunate. So we always offered to do it. We said, we'll take care of it. If you're okay with it, we'll take care of it. We'll submit it for you. Because it's just a lot. That's a lot of responsibility. So that, I mean, thank goodness you had that policy, Dad. That was great. So, is there any last piece of advice that you would give people that we didn't talk about?
I mean, just, have the conversations early. Have the conversations when you're not in this horrible fraught moment. Um, and they're awful. The conversations are hard and they're awful and nobody wants to have them. But it's so 1,000 times worse when you throw emotion into it.
Or you're in this urgent situation and you're having to make some really difficult conversations quickly. It's it's not as easy as if you could just talk through it and figure it out. So that's really helpful. And when I just want to ask, when you say conversations too, like when you say that to people, do you mean, Dad, let's talk about like your financial situation and what we can afford? Or do you mean, or both? What do you want at end of life? Like, what is it that you're hoping for? Do you want to be at home? Do you like what do you mean when you say the conversations?
I mean, all of them. I mean, you don't necessarily need to know what the will says, but you need to know where it is or who to ask. Um, oh, and that's another thing that we learned. Everything, everything that your parents own and that you own should be titled as transfer on death. Um, so Otherwise, it gets held up in probate. And the end result is the same thing, that it goes to the people it's supposed to go to, but you have to pay a lawyer and sit for a year and wait for this and that and file this and file that. Um, if your bank accounts are transfer on death, then it just automatically goes to whoever that person is.
How
Please,
did you do that? How
please
did
consult
you get
your financial planners. But um,
how did you get those set up? Is it something that you signed through the bank? Is it something
Jason and his mom, like his mom said, transfer on death too.
okay at
Uh,
the bank? So like stop in the bank, get a form, set them up this way. Okay.
yes, all of your assets should be transfer on death.
That's a great piece of advice because you're right. Probate can take.
She had a will, we didn't use it. She had no assets left.
That's phenomenal. Okay. So that's great piece of advice. Like I mean, I got to make sure my parents are set up like that, which I don't know if they are. So, um
And you need to know where the money is. Because I spent quite a bit of time tracking down. My mom had all of the statements, as you can imagine, but it was that this account had been at some point transferred from this bank to that bank. So these were really the same account, and you had to like follow the path of the money. And that this account was here, but now it was there, or these two were merged. And you just need either the person who's managing it for them to be able to explain it to you, or a list of where everything is. And if they don't want to tell you the bank balance, that's fine. You don't need to know what that number is. Look, I don't need to know what it is. I need to know where it is.
so if you have to access it, how do I do so?
And where do I find it?
Yeah.
So that I'm not fighting unclaimed funds for 9 months later with, a copy of your death certificate and a copy of this. And my parents had purchased Morgan Stanley stock in 1993, and it was like $3,000. So not life-changing money, but too much money to leave out there. It took me a year and a half to get that $3,000. We want the original stock certificates. Ma'am. Well, then I need somebody who purchased it. Well, they're unavailable. Well, then I need an affidavit of residency. Well, ma'am, did you want the cemetery? Um, So I needed to send this death certificate. Well, now we need the other one. So now you need to send that death certificate. Then we need to send this thing, that thing, the other. Like, I need to know where it all. I don't need to know what it is. If they're not comfortable sharing that, that's totally fine. Doesn't have to be your business. You need to know where it is.
I mean, that's great advice. That's fantastic advice.
You don't need to know what's in the will, but you need to know where the will is.
And probably maybe who the attorney is who,
Mhm.
yes,
And you need to know if they have a living will.
they should have a living will.
Well, of course they should.
Do
But
you have a living will?
of course I have a living will. I did it when I did my father's.
Okay, good. I do too. And our kids should have them that are 18 and older. Everybody should have one just so it's in place.
Yeah, Mama
That's
Bear
my
Legal
plug.
Forms. I'll give a plug for Mama Bear Legal Forms. It's the easiest set of forms you'll ever fill out.
Mama Bear legal forms. I will link to that on our podcast
There's
show
always
notes.
a coupon code, always for like 20% off or something like that. As soon as my kids turned 18, I did it for they'll give you two states if it's for kids. They'll give you two states. So I did this Ohio where I live and whatever state they were at college in.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And you fill it out. It's the easy, like you literally, it's 10 minutes and they give you power of attorney financial, power of attorney healthcare, the FERPA, so that you have access to their school records. Uh,
Medical.
yes.
Yep.
Well, medical, you're going to have to do it every single doctor
No, you don't.
for the HIPAA stuff. If you
Well,
want,
that's okay. But I mean, like, you need a medical POA, like, because you hate to say this, but like, if our kids
yes,
got
they
into
give
a
you a car accident,
car
100%.
accident, right? Like, you need to know, like, who's
Your,
going to make the decisions for you.
if your kid goes skiing and has an emergency splenectomy, you need the medical power of attorney.
You sound like that's from personal experience.
Hypothetical.
By the
Hypothetical.
way,
Yes,
Rachel is an attorney, so it is also helpful that she's promoting the Mama Bear legal forms because she knows what she's talking about.
but not providing legal advice.
Not providing legal advice. That is correct. Okay, so lastly, before I close, I do want you to show your sweatshirt though, because
So My dad always that was my dad always had a shtick. He always had a thing. He always had a joke, which was actually how he had dementia for a really long time because he would just make a joke when he didn't know who you were. Anyway, so he called me his favorite daughter. Obviously, I was his only one, and my brother was his favorite son. My husband was his favorite son-in-law. My kids were his favorite middle grandson, favorite youngest grandson, and his favorite granddaughter. And that is how he introduced us to the grocery checkout person or you. You know, how's my favorite daughter? So this is it's a brand, I guess, but I just
It is a brand, but I love that, I feel like I should get that, although I have a sister, so that might be awkward.
I think you should do it. Throw it down. No, I was shopping with Sophie on the anniversary of his death. Like it just happened to be that I was shopping with my daughter, and I bumped into the sweatshirt and I said, "Well, clearly need to buy this."
On the anniversary of his death, it was like a little message.
It was a little message.
Oh, I love that you have it and that you're wearing it today. And the way that I like to close, because I know that these are really emotional conversations, but my goal in having them is so that people can listen and learn, know that they're not alone, know that there are people that have gone through this, and what did you learn, so that they can hopefully have a slightly easier caregiving journey. And since you've revisited this with me, I just, as a sincere thank you, we like to make a donation in memory of your loved one. So I'd love to know where the Care Table can make a donation in memory of your parents.
They both requested in when they had sort of set it up before they passed that contributions be made to a charity called Magen David Adom, which is the Israeli Red Cross. Magen David is the Jewish star, and Adom is red because in Israel, obviously, it's not a cross; it's a star. But they just do life-saving work in Israel and the region, and that's what they would want.
I would be happy to do that. I cannot thank you enough for all the incredible advice that you just shared and being willing to share the story. You are a ray of sunshine, and you have a lot of incredible experience, unfortunately, in going through this. But what you just shared with us was so helpful. So my sincerest thank you. And I appreciate you joining us today.
Well, thank you for doing this because it's something that I definitely could have used when I was going through it. I felt pretty alone. And just the idea that this information is out there is a huge service to our generation because that generation doesn't talk about it.
They do not. So this is my goal. If we can just help one person with the story, I'll feel good about it.
No, Amy, you are doing something incredible, and I hope you are so proud of you because I am so proud of you.
You're a gem. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of The Care Table. Thank you so much for joining me. If you found this information helpful, would you like, subscribe, write a review, or share this episode with someone that you feel could benefit from hearing this information? I'd sure appreciate it. If you learned of anything during this podcast as far as books, resources, or products that you might think are helpful, be sure to check out the podcast show notes for links to access that information. A friendly reminder that this is not medical or legal advice. This is just information. Consult a professional for your own personal situation. I ask that God would bless you with the wisdom, the courage, and the strength that you need as you're navigating this caregiving journey. And I want to remind you, you are not alone. I appreciate you joining us today. And until next time, stay strong, and I hope to see you at the Care Table.